Very much. Well, the solution lies with the states. That's according to President Biden, who now says the pandemic won't be solved on the federal level. The Wall Street Journal editorial board says if that's the case, Biden should rescind the vaccine mandate. Wall Street Journal editorial board member Bill McGurn joining me now. Don't they recognize that there's a little bit of a contradiction, Bill, to say that the states are in charge while you have federal vaccine mandates?
No, I think it's par for the course. It's par for the course with the confusion from the White House. You know, one thing that President Biden hasn't been able to do is to establish clear leadership and priorities. Look, one of the big problems and the behind this reversal is that during the campaign he politicized COVID. You know, he said Donald Trump should step down because of all the deaths that from COVID under his watch. Well, he's had more deaths. He said we were going to shut it down. Now, sort of earthly reality is replacing progressive fantasy, and I think he's kind of forced into this. But again, as you point out, it's all sorts of contradictory policies. We should let the states experiment and see, you know, who does what. Plus, no one size fits all for everyone, right? That's what states are all about.
Exactly so. I mean, that's the beauty of our republic, is the fact that we have these little petri dishes called states where we try out things. But the one thing we've already tried out, the vaccine mandate, doesn't work. The fact is that we had an acceleration of vaccines before the mandate. The mandate came in and it leveled off. So it didn't have the stated effect. It's the same thing when the administration says the way to solve inflation is by spending trillions more. I mean, it's just they don't have policies that work.
Yeah, I think that's because, again, you know, Joe Biden came in promising to shut COVID down. And that promise, you know, COVID's making a liar of him, right? In some ways, I don't think that's his fault. It's just an impossibility. But I think what we have to do is we have to learn how to live with this. And that means mitigating risks, you know, having cost-benefit analysis for things, not just throwing something at the wall and see what sticks, and have honest conversations about what works and what does not work for this, and also rely on our private sector and our technology sector and medical center to come up with things that will help us deal with this better. That's where our hope is. Living with it, with the advances that you know, medicine and technology give us.
Well, and it does bring to mind whether we're all waiting, or a lot of people were waiting for a pivot from the far left, which Biden began the year and going into the year. Many people wonder whether 2022 he'd get ready to make a pivot towards the middle, which he said he would govern by. And maybe this is the moment. They had a pivot in Australia. It's a long way away, but they had the strictest lockdowns, the strictest mandates on earth in Australia. The Prime Minister of Australia came out with a complete reversal last week. For those who didn't see it, this is Prime Minister Scott Morrison. Here's what he said last Tuesday. Roll tape.
We've got to get past the heavy hand of government, and we've got to treat Australians like adults. We have to move from a culture of mandates to a culture of responsibility. That's how we live with this virus into the future.
Bill, could it be that is where President Biden is going?
I would say it should be where he's going for his own presidency. But a sign of that would be for Democrats to applaud Joe Manchin for keeping the ship from heading toward the shoals with what he did. Instead, he's vilified and treated as a public enemy. I don't think they know how to do it. And again, as I wrote today in my column, one of the problems is Joe Biden as president has not shown leadership. You know, he's behaved more like a senator, and he's left this stuff to be hashed out in the back rooms of Congress. He needs to take more command over his own party and drive it and say, these are the priorities. I expect people, you know, to join me with it. I don't know if he has it in him.
Well, it's a good question. The other question is how he's going to deal with what he has wrought, with what his policies have wrought all around the world, not just in domestic policy with inflation, but what happened in Afghanistan. You write about that in your column this week. We have an old colleague. He's now with another organization, which name is we won't mention because it's a competitor of ours, Al Hunt, who used to be the Washington bureau chief at the Wall Street Journal. He wrote a piece saying 2021 wasn't so bad, essentially saying that this administration has actually been kind of good. He says that we have a good economy, notwithstanding the fact that we have record inflation like we haven't seen since the 70s. He says it's scandal-free, this administration, despite what happened with Hunter Biden, despite the lies that were said about Afghanistan and getting troops out. And he said that we have a competent team in the cabinet. The Biden administration is a competent team. You have a Treasury Secretary who spent 2 months off during the middle of a supply chain crisis. You have an Energy Secretary who couldn't tell the press exactly how much oil America uses per day. I would say it's a pretty bad record, not a good one. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say Afghanistan alone. I mean, it was the most humiliating setback for America I've seen in my life. The way we left people behind and signaled to the rest of the world how incompetent we were. I think this is the president's problem now. It's not so much a left or right divide or Republican or Democrat. I think people just think the job is too big for him. He's in over his head. They might even think well of him, but they don't think he can do the job. And that's why you're hearing all these allusions now to Jimmy Carter, because he's sort of a metaphor for political haplessness.
Well, so what happens in the big ticket items? I mean, in dealing with China, for example, I mean, they're clearly got their eyes on Taiwan. Is 2022 going to be the year where we see China go into Taiwan, Russia go into Ukraine again, or will he get a pass in 2022?
Well, I mean, that's the fear, right? I think they're very well-grounded fears. You know, what Joe Biden needs now, having projected such weakness and indecision on the international stage, he needs sort of an air traffic controllers moment, which, when Reagan fired them, it sent a signal to Moscow, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, and he's serious. And I think because of the president's failures, especially in Afghanistan, the price has gone up. I would advise him, I think one of the best ways he could salvage his presidency and send a strong message to these hard men in Beijing and Moscow is by getting tough with Iran. I mean, Iran sort of is in the position now to do sort of least harm. You know, you can understand why you don't want a one-on-one confrontation with China. But I think if I were in the president's shoes, I'd be looking to do something with Iran, especially if we calculate that they are pursuing their nuclear ambitions. Lots of avenues we could take that would convey a message of strength.
Bill, I'm smiling because I'm thinking, you quoted Ronald Reagan and talked about what he did. I'm thinking of a Democratic politician who once said, I remember Ronald Reagan. I worked with Ronald Reagan, and believe me, Biden is no Ronald Reagan. I mean, I think it's highly unlikely that he's going to find Ronald Reagan's spine in his back when he wakes up tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Look, I think President Biden sees the same dangers that we do with Xi Jinping and Putin and so forth. But I think his conclusion is, I don't want to do anything that might provoke him. And of course, that's the kind of weakness that makes a conflict more likely, not less likely. There's no way out of this for us without some projection of strength.
Peace through strength. That was the phrase that Ronald Reagan used to use. It's a good phrase. Bill McGurn, thank you very much. Appreciate it.